right.
Hey, what's up, man?
We've met.
Yeah.
We're hanging out backstage.
Yeah, can everybody hear okay? Okay.
I can hear us. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
So, I got one of your projects here. We had you on the Engadget show. I don't know, probably about, what was that, 6, 7? You probably even have a worse sense of time than I do at this point.
No, like 6 months ago.
About 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So I was talking to Tim, and we really wanted to bring you to the show. And Tim asked me, well, what's he going to talk about? Does he have anything new? And I said, I suspect that you've done a few things in the meantime. Last time we spoke to you, Antarctica was sort of the big topic on your mind.
Well, now it's about islands. This year I'm representing or working with the Maldives Pavilion for the Venice Biennial. And so it's kind of an interesting thing. For art, the Venice Biennial is kind of like the Academy Awards of art, and they fly in all sorts of people. Every country has its own pavilion. And the Maldives are an incredible group of islands that are about to, they're being impacted heavily by global warming.
You said they're actually the first ones that may actually be fully submerged because of the rising tides.
Yeah, which is intense. I mean, if you think about what it means to be a nation state and what it means to be an island, those are two kind of quirkily, paradoxical things. So what I'm doing is measuring the ocean currents around the islands and doing what they call data sonification, turning that data into a group of string quartet works. And then we're going to have that premiere at the Venice Biennial as an installation and a concert. So it's kind of like art meets sound and digital media. But I love doing stuff like that.
It's certainly not the first time that somebody has been fully inspired by nature, or even used kind of algorithms for nature to create music. I'm wondering, in the case of something like that, is it because you think it would be cool, or do you think it's genuinely going to make good music?
Well, yeah, music is very subjective. And the funny thing about our daily life right now is we're looking at data as the new palette. I really think artists are having such incredibly robust relationships to all the data we're generating that you're going to be seeing a lot more artists doing stuff. There's an artist named Trevor Plagins, for example, who's putting a satellite in orbit, and that's going to be a geosynchronous piece of art that lasts over 1 billion years.
For the benefit of whom?
Whatever aliens are left after we've destroyed the planet. I don't know. But a lot of artists, I'm inspired by people like John Cage or Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, but on one end of the spectrum. But in terms of hip hop and techno and dubstep, a lot of this stuff that comes out of the urban landscape. If you think about the beginning of techno, it's kind of amazing because Detroit is now 40% prairie. And techno was meant to be the music of the production line, of the machinery, of the factory. And if you look at what happens with now, it's like the Rust Belt.
Yeah, well, Detroit disco is very much in the spirit of that. So you told me, well, we were at South by Southwest. You were at South by Southwest. We did some cool things. I feel like you kind of can trump us on that. Can you talk about what you were doing last night?
Yeah, South by Southwest. Oh, okay. Yeah, you guys, as an audience, as long as a global DJ, I travel almost every other day. So I was at South by Southwest, had a 6 a.m. flight to get back to New York for a dinner hosted by James Cameron, who does Avatar.
You're so modest, and you have to ask everybody if they know who James Cameron is.
It's some people will be like, "Yo, is he a hip hop MC?" MC Jims, But it's one of those moments where he flew in a lot of chefs or had food that was created by indigenous people or what they normally consume. So they had like roasted tarantulas, crickets, larvae from some sort of weird termite colony in Papua New Guinea, roasted muskrat. And so that was at the Waldorf Astoria last night. And then I had a 6 a.m. flight here. Then I have a 11 p.m. flight back to New York. Then I go to Milan for the Design Biennial. And
you still seem more awake than I am somehow.
Coffee, But South by Southwest, I threw a fun party with the band OK Go. And they're all going to be starting a couple DJ projects on the side. Okay. And I really am a big fan of their video. And the way that they've been able to do choreography and rock is pretty compelling. Them and the Flaming Lips are two of my favorite bands dealing with weird conceptual kind of stuff. Yeah.
Do you encourage that? Do you encourage everybody to get into kind of the DJ space? I mean, we were talking about Bob Moog, the synthesizer guy, and you had the luck to befriend him before he passed away.
Yeah, when he was in New York, Bob Moog he's a big hero of mine because he's an engineer who got sound, and not just sound design, because that's a different thing. I mean, if you look at half of the sound systems and the way that we use sound in our home and the way we consume media around us, your TV, the stereo system. I'm a big fan of Blaupunkt, and I'm a big fan of Sonos and stuff like that. But Bob Moog got there really early in the 60s when it was very new. And he was a mathematician trying to figure out frequencies and design. So half of the rock albums of the 60s, Pink Floyd, Rolling Stones, they all use his gear. And that's like serious geek cred, because like half of the soundtrack of rock.
And the theremin.
Yeah, theremin.
Yeah, all of those things.
Those are, I mean, for me as a DJ, I sample stuff like that and make beats out of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, you listen to Dre's stuff from the 90s, and that's got a ton of Moog in it.
Yeah, it's all Moog and like Roger Troutman, you know, vocoder.
Yeah. How do you, I mean, it's an interesting process. How do you teach somebody who's, you know, who's in that world to DJ, you know? How do you get them to wrap their brain around that?
Well, even my mom is DJing now, I mean, at this point. But the software I developed with Music Soft Arts, they're a really interesting company that we're looking at interface. And the idea is that interfaces with media, as we think of it, turntables were the first real playback mechanism to become so popular. If you think about the beginning of the 20th century, Thomas Edison, with the invention of the phonograph, the only other thing that had more impact was the rise of what they call a cathedral radio. So if you were an average American family back then, the major companies, it's many, RCA, Victor, Columbia, they sold you hardware to sell you the software. So if you, it's like, you know, you buy a shaving device because they make more money off
Bic, or the Gillette model.
Yeah, they make more money selling you the thing to kind of update it.
Yeah.
So actually most of the major American companies involved with culture, which then became record labels, if you look at the beginning of the 20th century, they were selling hardware. And now Apple kind of got the same thing with selling you both software and hardware. So you can easily see how the 20th versus 20th century model is going, is that these kind of playback devices and the way we consume mobile media, that's where you're talking about content and production. It's totally blurred the lines.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously somebody who's really excited to adopt new technology. We've got your iPad mini up there. I'm wondering, you know, are you the kind of person, do you run out, buy it, and then figure out what to do with it? Or, you know, are you buying a platform to work on top of?
Yeah, I mean, when the iPad first came out, my team, we were one of the first people, if not the first, to get a DJ Mixer app out. And we're now up to about 15 million downloads. So we're usually in the top 20 for top grossing apps. The generic one is DJ Mixer, and the more freemium version, or the premium one, is DJ Spooky. So we had a line a couple blocks long just to see app demos at the Soho store for Apple. And the iPad's only been out 2 and some change years.
Isn't that crazy?
April 10, 2010 was when the first iPads came out. So yeah, it's really changed the relationship to how you touch the screen in a way that was very open. And that's DJing. I mean, if you're touching a turntable, you're playing with something that wasn't made for DJing. I mean, Thomas Edison felt that turntables would never be used for playback. He's like, why would anyone want to? They were meant to be recording.
Yeah.
So they were called cylinder recordings and stuff like that.
Well, and the original wax cylinder actually had a speaker built into it. So it was not only the original recording device, it was also the original playback device, which is actually kind of fascinating.
And that's where the cell phone comes in, because I think so many people are experiencing media now through these smaller, like that's right, you're calling it the phablet, you know, phone, tablet.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of, you know, the Samsung Galaxy Note 2.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of what happened with the iPad mini, although I hope that they get more robust chips in the next generation. Could be more faster processing, things like that. But it's the Moore's Law thing is so radical, especially when people think about music, because the amount of storage I could use, and this is where I want to play a clip. We just did a film with Sean Parker and Sean Fanning. Sean Parker is most notorious from the network. I'm sure many of you saw that movie. But he
Justin Timberlake.
Justin Timberlake doing cocaine with an intern. I couldn't make this up. But the fun part about that film is it showed that these were young kids who were code heads hanging out, and it was fun. It wasn't like they had some huge corporate model coming down on them, and everything was new. So with Napster, we had Sean Fanning, who wrote the source code of Napster at age 16.
He is Napster. That was his nickname. Yeah.
And Chuck D likes to call him the Beatles of digital music right now, because that just changed everything. So we had him narrate the new film, and I'd love to play you guys a clip of it.
Let's get over there.
So when you think about Napster and you think about social media, the fun part about this, I'm going to load this clip for a second, is this year I'm the first artist in residence at the Metropolitan Museum, and we're having a big concert coming up on March 23rd where I'm going to remix the museum.
Yeah. So, what is, I mean, you told me that backstage, and that's such kind of like a big concept. What does that mean even?
Well, a museum to me is like a record collection.
Yeah.
And you're looking at how people look at objects, and they usually don't touch them, and they're meant to be kind of in a proscenium, like, you know, against that. But with DJing, you want to be able to be irreverent, you want to cut a song up, you want to splice it, dice it, loop it, layer it, and you want to have it be fun. So what I wanted to do with the whole Napster film, this is directed by Alex Winter.
Bill?
Yeah, and the fun part about that, we presented it at South by Southwest. We had a couple thousand people come out to the premiere. I'll just scroll down for a second. And by the way, the New York Times just did a big review, or preview of my show at the Met.
So a nice plug for DJspooky.com.
I was very happy for that. So we just loaded the trailer up, and I'll play you a quick clip of this. But you see how young these two are. That's Sean Parker and Sean Fanning.
Fanning's the one with the baseball cap on.
Yeah, he always wears a baseball cap.
Yeah.
But I was a judge for the Webby Awards, and there's a very funny scene in the movie where he was shocked that the Napster won the Webby Awards. And don't forget, when you guys see this, it's just a couple years ago, and you just check out the interface and stuff like that. If we can get sound. All right.
Yeah, we got sound on there.
You're talking about revolutionizing the way we use computers.
The fact that you could kind of share emotion over the internet, something so important to you, you could just trade so freely.
That's what was so profoundly different about the explosion of the internet, was that it was one network. So suddenly you could be connected to everyone.
I released an early beta version of the Napster software during the summer, and it spread quickly by word of mouth. It hasn't stopped growing since.
Just, wanted to create a way to meet people through music.
Music will be ubiquitous, and we believe, you'll be able to get it on your cell phone, you'll be able to get it on whatever the device of the future is.
We knew it was a long way off from all the music being available digitally. And then there it was.
I just felt like this was one of the great moments in human history.
This is a company that is building a business. They've got venture capital money.
My response to him, I couldn't type it fast enough, was, don't take the money. You don't have a business.
They're building a business by facilitating the stealing of artists' music.
We saw the clicks of the numbers, and that's what they were downloading at that particular time. That was shocking.
The music business is a great example of just complacency being a total death sentence.
I thought that the way that people got music for the last 50 years worked.
The record companies are not adjusting to technology.
Major music industries, entire floors were turning their lights off.
I'm bootleg proof, you dig? That's great, isn't it?
Metallica was coming to our office.
What we're merely doing is giving Napster the information that they thought that we couldn't get them.
Napster is stealing from us, straight up, and I'm going to fight them to the death.
As last fall semester wore on, hundreds quickly turned to millions, with the program spreading across college campuses like wildfire.
Nearly 60 million people used the site to swap music files from each other's computers for free.
We literally went from being high school kids leading normal, mundane lives to 12 months later bringing one of the largest U.S. industries to its knees and basically fighting what is the largest corporate lawsuit in the history of the world.
Lawyers representing Napster and the recording industry squared off before a 3-judge panel.
What is it capable of being used for? We are not trying to stop the internet, certainly.
The final word on Napster will eventually end up coming from the U.S. Supreme Court.
Music downloaders, beware. The recording industry is suing computer users.
What they've done is to turn an entire generation of kids into electronic Hezbollah.
A bomb went off, and nobody knew what the hell was happening.
It has changed everything.
It's obviously so big, it's out of their control.
The cat wasn't going back in the bag.
Now the people have a choice.
There's no stopping it. This revolution is already taken place.
So, yeah, we're going to have that premiere at the Met Museum, March 22nd, if anybody happens to be in New York. But we had a premiere at South by Southwest with thousands of people coming out. We threw a big party. I don't know. I'm just really happy with the film's progress. Alex Winter is a really interesting documentary filmmaker. So that's you just saw it. It's going to be out in about a month.
I'm interested. You know, we saw a lot of really prominent musicians interviewed there. Snoop was in there.
Snoop Dogg.
Mike D. Bowie was in there. And a lot of these actually looked like they were from the time.
And Dr. Dre, who's notorious. The two people who were against music sharing so much at the beginning were Metallica and Dr. Dre.
Lars Ulrich,
And now, of course, they're like, oh yeah, I love social media. It's great.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, you know, certainly they've kind of changed their song as far as outreach goes, but have you found that in the years since then that a lot of these artists are embracing this?
As a matter of fact, I look at what happened with the Grateful Dead, which is actually a really interesting band from the viewpoint of the fact that they gave their music away, and they would encourage people to record their concerts and trade mixes.
Dick's Picks. And,
and that actually created a whole aftermarket for their recordings, whereas the normal music industry fought Napster tooth and nail, but lost. And you can easily see Steve Jobs and his team analyzed Napster and pulled that kind of functionality into iTunes. And iTunes has now made more money in just a couple of years than the entire music industry for the last 50 years. So the mathematics of downloading, micropayments and so on, is still immense. But they're, you know, it's kind of, when we were working on the film and I was doing the soundtrack, we were going through all these interviews, and there were Dr. Dre, he's made more money off of Beats by Dre, you know, the headphones, than his entire music career. But it's interesting to see how people respond to the idea of what is free. So if a musician downloads a song or somebody else downloads a song for free, is the value of that in economic terms measurable, or is it building their cultural value?
It seems like a lot to ask for these artists to make all their money through something like touring. I mean, especially considering that a lot of them are just making stuff in studios and can't necessarily tour to support it.
Right, but look at the two biggest songs in the world right now, the Harlem Shake and the Gangnam Dance video, both of which were totally free, and there's a tremendous amount of economics in free. You know, I'm a huge fan of Lawrence Lessig and Creative Commons, and I hosted a lot of the early events for Electronic Frontier Foundation. So as a musician, I'm very interested in that, but from the viewpoint of the arts, the idea of value is really, that's where, again, the Met has some of the world's largest collection of like all sorts of paintings and sculptures and steel, like armor from like 13th century. So I'll be sampling that throughout a year and remixing the museum.
I think we're actually out of time. That was really fast. Is there anything else that, you've got Origin magazine here?
Oh, you're right. Let me just show really quick. Yeah, me and some friends started a new magazine called Origin, and we're working with a whole bunch of different artists. But above all, I wanted to, let me show you some of the, Yoko Ono did our inaugural issue, and then we have Ai Weiwei and a whole, this is Ai Weiwei after he just got out of a Chinese prison. You don't want to go to a Chinese prison. Hey. And
he wasn't applying for Chinese prison, by the way.
Don't apply for Chinese prisons. But we've had a lot of different people, like Robert Redford's been very supportive of the magazine, Common, Questlove from The Roots. So these are people in a music or group of peers and friends. It's a magazine that's artist run, and we're at every Whole Foods in the US and Canada. And the idea is
here. You've got some here too.
Yeah, I bought the copies. If anybody wants, I'll leave some out. So it's meant to be artist run magazine that's kind of fun. We had Jimmy Cliff. He's one of the most legendary. So for me, it's like going through my record collection and saying, hey, we got a new artist we want to see doing something.
Yeah, you said you'd spent time with George Clinton out in South by Southwest.
He's going to be in the next issue, but this is the first issue. Yoko Ono, she chose that image. I did not. The cleavage is her choice. And so,
Yoko thing to choose. I mean, that's not shocking.
Yeah. So when you do an artist-run magazine, it's going to get a little spicy, you know. But yeah, in general, I just want to say it's really a pleasure to see how quickly stuff is moving. And it was really a pleasure to talk to Chris Anderson backstage before he went on as well. So
I mean, that's the thing I think I've loved more than anything about the show is watching all these really smart people from different industries kind of teaming up.
And hopefully it should be fun.
Yeah,
right.
It all started here.
But one other micro detail is, and then I guess we got
to get going, sadly.
Is all of the stuff I'm doing. We were talking earlier about Antarctica. This is me hanging out with a lot of penguins, and penguins are definitely.
You're the one in the front, right?
Penguins are definitely not funky. So breakdancing penguins, don't do it. But thanks for having me.
Cool. Thank you so much, Paul.
All right.
Thank you. Go around this way.